Yeah, I'm gonna start with a quick introduction for myself. I'm a design director here at Humbleteam, and we are a design team, and we basically love. I will say two things. The first one, startups, and user experience is the second one. And 5 years ago, I was a founder of two startups myself, and I will say our marketing and sales components, they pretty much sucked. And business-wise, we failed miserably, but everybody actually loved the design and the user experience. And this is how the whole Humbleteam thing started. Um, since that, we've done some amazing stuff actually, like designing different fintech apps that got plenty of money. Uh, many companies from Y Combinator and Techstars came to us, and yeah, other cool startups. And actually, recently, even engineers from NASA came to us to design a system to kind of like manage cargo storage on the International Space Station. So I will say that being extremely bad at sales and marketing, it kind of like actually paid off. And in total, we work on more than 100 different projects, but a lot of investment around and yeah, that's kind of like my build up, and now it's gonna be the act. I will say that many startups they ask us about best approaches to come up with new creative and useful features. And even though there is no kind of like a silver bullet, like a single method to design the best UX possible, there is so a method to improve the quality of your product design process. And I will say that there are two things to understand before we go deeper into our cases. I think that design is all about iterations, and I think that basically more you iterate, the better your user experience you have. And the key is to make better design decisions. Key to make better design decisions is to iterate more, and that's kind of like the main thing in the design process. To make good design decisions, you need to go live with your iterations as fast as possible and collect as many user feedback pieces as possible. If you can iterate fast, you will eventually come up with great design ideas. And if you release, I don't know, one feature in 6 months, you don't have this luxury of iterations, right? So that's kind of like the key for releasing great features. It's basically having the shortest time to market possible and iterating as fast as possible. Um, our main topic for today will be how to come up with great design ideas and test them as quickly as possible, because the speed is the very important factor. And in my humble opinion, a good release cycle, it's something like up to 3 weeks, including the implementation. And yeah, let me explain why exactly 3 weeks, actually, not 5 or 2, for instance. Basically, if you have 3 weeks, within a year, you can have up to 18 experiments, 18 different releases, right? And imagine you spend, for instance, 4 weeks from an idea to release, and in such a case, you will lose like 30% of experiments, right? If you spend like the whole month to release some feature in your product, you have only 13 launches annually, and it's like 13 versus 18, right? And it sounds a little bit scary to me, because such a pace will be thoroughly bad for your product. And if you have releases every 5 weeks, it's gonna be actually completely disastrous, because it means only 10 experiments for a whole year, like 10 opportunities to share the product and collect feedback. So that's gonna be our conclusion. We need to stick to an idea that we need to try to test product hypotheses, product ideas in 3 weeks, including the implementation. And now I'm gonna go through that particular example from our experience, and I'm gonna show you the design process, how it should look like to meet this 3 weeks deadline. So kind of like a description of the app we've been working on. It's a neobank application with pretty much standard features, right? There is like checking account, debit card, saving account, transfers, top up, all these standard flows you probably already know. And imagine you want to add a new feature to help people save money on their paid subscriptions. Because imagine a user with tens of subscriptions, right? Like Netflix, Spotify, all these things. And a lot of them, from our statistical data, they live from actually a paycheck to paycheck. And here's kind of like the main trick. If you have no money right now, but there is a Netflix subscription charging you, you're gonna get a fee, right? And imagine multiple subscriptions charging you at the same time. That's gonna lead to pretty significant fees in total, right? And it's even scarier. It's even worse because you already have no money in your pocket, right? So there is definitely a pain point to address. Users have late and overdraft fees, and they're not really happy about that. And to solve this issue, we wanted to offer a line of credit for our users. Like it's simply 50, 60 bucks to cover those subscriptions with no interest, right? So from this point, let's simply plan how we will release such a feature for our application within 3 weeks interval, right? A lot of smart startup-ish people will be, let's put an MVP for this, right? Not a full-scale feature, but just an MVP to test the idea first. Let's check what will be an MVP for such a feature. We can list all the screens we need to design and develop to launch such an MVP, right? Basically, you don't need to read all the things on a screen. It's just to give you an understanding of amount of work that is needed to launch such a feature, right? Basically, first of all, setup. You need to onboard users. You need to recognize subscriptions in their transactions. You need to cover edge cases like subscription cannot be edited. You need to edit subscriptions. A lot of things. And then when people use this feature, it's gonna be even more screens, right? Here is my list of subscriptions to pay, empty states, overdue payments, credit line setup, credit line repayment, etc., etc., etc. So in total, more than 20 screens, and it looks like a lot, right? Much more than a design and development team can handle within the 3 weeks interval, right? So yeah, here is the main thing. What we gonna do? We wanted to get back actually to the assumption we want to test initially, right? And let's kind of like check our risks, right? People probably will not add subscriptions at all using our feature, and then we have no data to offer them a credit line, right? Maybe after a launch, and our onboarding will be not convincing enough to convert users, and people will not sign up for a feature at all, right? Or maybe after the launch, people will convert, they will add subscriptions, they will use the feature eventually, but it will have like zero effect on the retention rate. Or maybe people will not pay the debt back, right? There are a lot of risks actually, but that's here comes the main point of our design process. Actually, you can prioritize those risks to solve the most important ones first. To me, it seems like the number 3 is the most important one, because if you have no retention increase, it doesn't really matter if people have or have not subscriptions, they pay or do not pay, if they have or don't have late fees, right? This third risk is the most important one. And we can focus on testing this main risk only, because if we fail here, the rest doesn't really matter. And if retention does go up, we will like somehow solve the rest, the bad onboarding flow, I don't know, the buggy flow for changing subscriptions. We're gonna solve the rest somehow if we cover this main point. So based on this, we can basically tweak our plan to test the retention assumption. And here's how it's gonna look like. We can simply manually select people who live from paycheck to paycheck, because they're more likely to use our feature and we don't need extensive onboarding to convince them, right? So we can cross out the first screen in our MVP, right? We can also manually check transactions, and we can add subscriptions manually on users' behalf as well, right? So we can get rid of other onboarding screens from the MVP. And also, we don't really need any interface to edit or change it, since we do it manually, right? So it can be a super, to add those subscriptions manually, it could be actually a super cheap workforce, right? Like a freelancer who will check the database of users, check their payments, and just manually mark subscription payments. So it's like an easy peasy gig for like 2 working days, right? So as you can see, we've already 50% done with our scope just by actually hiring a student who will do that manual work. And the core idea actually is that when we want to release a new feature, we need to understand what are our main risks, pick the most important one, and test only only this single thing. So based on this case, we could kind of like forge the process to test new hypotheses, right? Here you're gonna be the first step, determine the value proposition you're trying to test, right? Like it could be, we want to test if adding a line of credit for paying subscriptions will increase retention in our application, right? Then secondly, you need to identify all the risks in your assumption, right? Those are typical risks. It could be, for instance, users do not recognize the product value, right? For example, you've added a crypto trading option in your application, but all the users, they're already committed to services like Coinbase or Revolut, for instance. So there is simply no need for this additional feature in your product. It could be hard to acquire users. We have had this quite a lot. It could be, I don't know, like imagine you have created an application that allows you to find a medical professional in Europe, and it turned out that most major European cities have one of their own, and they know their local market very well, and you're in direct competition, right? And it's gonna be super hard to get new users. It could be hard to make money out of feature, right? I mean, product is being used, but profit and loss statement is still in red kind of situation. And the last but not least is that it could be simply hard to execute such a feature, right? Let's say your application offers help with moving, right? And as soon as you reach, I don't know, 100 requests daily, the city is suddenly out of van drivers with no possibility to recruit more in time. So the feature gonna be kind of like useless. So here are our risks, right? And now we've reached the most important part. You have the assumption, you have the risks, and now you need to pick one risk that you're most likely to face. And also, if you kind of like an additional information, if you want to read more about testing hypotheses this way, I can definitely recommend an amazing article from Maven's CEO on firstround.com. There are kind of like additional things to check. And yeah, that's pretty much the approach we use for startups we work with. And yeah, I do have a couple of other examples, because this it's originally like a 2-hour talk for accelerators. We participate as mentors. The background, the project, it's a mobile application for artists. It basically helps artists have their own artworks in one place. Like it's kind of like a Google Drive for artists, where they can store everything they have. And if you're a painter, you usually have materials for arts all over the place, right? When somebody wants to buy something from your inventory, you send a photo from Dropbox, description in email. Then buyers ask for additional pictures, you send them using WhatsApp, for instance. It's really chaotic process. And the app solves these issues, becoming kind of like a single source of truth, where you can upload all your photos, prices, artwork sizes, metadata, pretty much everything. And if somebody asks you, do you have any artworks for my living room below, I don't know, $1,000, you can just like, boom, send them everything in one single email or in one single WhatsApp message. But we had a problem. We had tens of thousands of users, but we didn't have any top tier professional artists at all. And our audience, basically, it was hobby painters who sell paintings as a side gig. And we wanted to attract those professional folks, right? Real professional artists with, I don't know, 30 years of experience, artworks they sell for 10, 12, $20,000. But it was really impossible to get them into the application. Why? Because if they want to upload everything they have into a mobile application, it means uploading tons of things. It's uploading hundreds of photos, filling in hundreds of input fields. Inventory is huge. There are many, many, many artworks. So if you're a professional artist and you see a banner on Facebook like sign up for Marcel app and put your inventory in one place, the onboarding process will be actually a bummer, right? You click on the banner and you need to spend like 2 working weeks just typing in your metadata, uploading images. So it doesn't really look anyhow good. And so here's the situation. We think that our app will benefit from professional artists, right? You can invite, they can invite other artists. They can promote our application. There are thought leaders, but they don't really want to spend their precious time uploading everything they have in the application because they simply see it for the first time in their life, right? So yeah, what shall we do? It's absolutely obvious thing that we need to optimize onboarding for those people, right? For people with hundreds of artworks. I mean, like bulk upload, create some way to automatically sync your Dropbox, for instance, or Google Drive, right? But design and development for such a thing, that will take like a month minimum, which is kind of like against our policy to release every feature every 15 days. So we decided to get back to the assumption we want to test. So this is what our MVP must check. We need to check if top class artists will help us get on board new users, other artists, and we don't want to test if they can go through the onboarding process, right? Or if they will manage to upload 100 artworks, right? We want to test if pro artists will retain in the app and they will recommend the app to many other folks they know or not. So what if we reach out to professional artists? We can ask them to send all their Dropbox links, Google Drive folders, spreadsheets with sizes, like Word documents with prices, and we will create their accounts in their application and upload everything on basically their behalf, right? And you can imagine, like, if you're an artist, you have all your materials all over the place, struggling to even tell the price for the artwork because you simply, I don't know, forgot it. And then just like, you have your whole inventory sorted, systemized in the application, and everything you need, log in with an email and password in the application, which of course, you can set up later. So basically, to test this idea, we needed to hire somebody for 1 month to transfer a bunch of JPEGs and text into the application, manually type them in. And we didn't need to create even a single additional screen in the application, actually. So this example took 0 development time because designer needed to create only a bunch of emails for those professional artists within the marketing campaign, and that was it. So here's the quick recap in a form of our scheme. The value proposition we were trying to test was, we want to test if professional artists will retain in our app. And then here are the risks, right? Artists will abandon the app, they will not upload artworks, they will not pay, etc., etc., etc. There are many of them, but we need to pick the most probable risk and create a flow to test it, and that's pretty much it. And since we have, I don't know if you have some time left, probably not really. We have like maybe 1 minute. So yeah, that's gonna be pretty much the last key study I wanted to go through. Yeah, once again, if you have any questions, I'm checking the LinkedIn and YouTube and Slack. Let me know. We'll be happy to address them.